Hi, Charles. Welcome.
How are you?
Good, good. I'm going to get started and I'm going to use this as well as a recording for my website. But I'll have some questions through this as well. And if somebody else pops in, that'd be great too. Thanks for coming and I'm going to get started.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So, I'd like to thank you for joining me today in this leadership workshop from overwhelmed to empowering leader. I'm very excited you're here. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, you are not alone. Did you know that over 50% of the people that step into leadership roles for the first time do not feel prepared and are not supported? I'm an online leadership coach, change insurgent, and CFO with over 26 years experience driving profitability through change in organizations, 16 of those as a CFO. In addition, I'm an innovative facilitator with over 10 years experience developing and implementing experiential learning. Now, as a certified professional coach, I lead leaders individually and in groups, and I help them complement their strong technical skill base with dynamic leadership skills that will allow them to connect, collaborate, innovate, and develop and engage productive teams. So I'm going to open up with a couple of quotes. First one's by Simon Sinek, and he's an author and speaker. A couple of his books are Start With Why and The Infinite Game. And he defines leadership as being about empowering others to achieve things they did not think possible. Another person I'm quoting is Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet and Google. And he focuses more on the collaborative side as having an impact. And he talks about a diverse mix of voices leads to better discussions, decisions, and outcomes for everyone. So empowering others adds results to your organization, helps you feel less overwhelmed, and helps your people maximize their potential. And a lot of leaders that step into these roles, it's the last thing that gets focused on, but the most important. So I want to just look at a way for you to get better results now in the future without being overwhelmed. I'd like to take a step back for a second and tell you how I got here. I stepped into coaching leaders because as a CFO, despite successfully building companies and excelling at innovative and challenging work, I became disconnected, a lone wolf. I kept too much on my own shoulders. I was a leader groomed to lead in a hierarchical system. See, I never went into a meeting without an answer. So I became successful but empty. So I'm just going to put my first slide up here. Get her for it. Share. Okay. So I want to kind of compare two styles here now. The old leadership model, which was built and a lot of companies are evolving out of, but still it exists through the structure. And this model was built through the Industrial Revolution. So what it was looking for conformity to create efficiency. So it's about breaking down the tasks, streamlining the processes, and there is a focus on continuous improvement of those processes and technology. Change management is the most critical piece in this. And it also looks at how to evolve these large tech systems, focusing on the systems with the tasks. And all of the training is tied to, as you can see, there's a trend through this, tasks. In this structure, the leader is the authority because we've come from a place where the leader had the experience. So they became the source of knowledge. The focus of the leader was very head focused. Tasks, schedules, budgets, goals, results. And it was hierarchical, top-down structure and authority. So the people who became leaders in this structure had a lot of charisma and were fast on decision-making and innovative themselves and had vision. But in this world, it was built on silos, different departments, different companies, different structures of government, etc. It's a power over approach. Now, this worked in the context of efficiency because it pushed the task through and it was a focus on improvement. And every so often there was cross-functional teams developed in a crisis kind of environment, but it wasn't the norm. But this did not work in the long run for me. So as you said, my story as a CFO, I became disconnected, burnt out, frustrated, and I became frustrated that people in an organization were not more innovative. So I looked at different ways to find that. And it wasn't working at a micro level because in this structure, all the voices are not present or not heard. And as we can see now, it doesn't work in the bigger picture either. So as we see with racial equality protests that are happening, there's lack of support in the major systems because once again, they were built in silos. Our police, our social work, our healthcare. They're only built to come together in a crisis. So as a result of this, I then in my own development went hunting and I went into education and I found more collaboration there. And then in the last 4 years, I went into coaching and I said, there are ways for me to connect and help facilitate my team members and team to get better results. And it came out of this approach. So now I'm passionate about bringing it all together, helping emerging and evolving leaders move forward. So if now we look at the new style, this is where we're going, right? And in this new style, we're looking for leadership to embrace diversity. And of course, the big conversation we've had in this last year is, first of all, we have to get the right people at the table, the right people in the teams, the right people in the companies. And once we have that, how do we support both at an organizational level and individually the development of everyone? So new leadership needs to be head and heart focused. So leaders and employees need to be self-aware. They need to understand their emotional intelligence. They need to know how to ask. The things we talked about before, schedules, budgets, goals, results, they're still there, okay? And we're looking for leaders to empower others. No one person is an authority anymore. Everyone can get lots of knowledge out of the internet, right? We have a shared base now. So the leader becomes, instead of this knowledge base, they become the coach and facilitator. And their role is to help create a voice for all. We're also looking for collaboration and innovation here because we're in a very fast moving pace. We know even right now, coming out of what we're going to come out of, change is going to be fast and it needs to be iterative. So we need flexible structures. We need the ability to use not big tech systems, but systems that are more flexible with apps, etc. And we need to break down the silos and speed up change. So it becomes the role of a leader to have power with, not power over. And this becomes good for ourselves, for our people, and for our organizations. And like I said, this is even more relevant in 2021. We're still looking for the soul to contributor to shift into being a leader, and there's still issues about that. But we also have these bigger things going on now, right? There's significant change happening in our world. And we all know it through COVID, the world of remote work, this massive economic shift that's needed to be created now, and the need for racial equality. And it sits in organizations to create that. So let me just take down this slide. Stop the share. There we go. Okay. So near the end of this presentation, I'll give you a way to continue this conversation if you would like to explore any of these ideas in a deeper way or have any unanswered questions.
I have one question.
Okay, jump in.
Okay. You talked about a sole contributor getting into a leadership role. Something that I find is this, right? As a sole contributor, your head is focused on task, okay?
Yes.
Then when you become a leader, I hear you say that people first, task second. Leaders that find it difficult to let the task go, they don't succeed in their organization. So does it mean that as a leader, you should not be involved in task related activities, just people first and that's it?
Actually, it's going to be both, and my first key is about how to let go. So there's a part that you will still contribute as a leader individually, and that is really looking at what is unique that you bring to that team that no one else can do. or nobody else can do right now. So there is that part that you still have a responsibility to bring to the table. But it's looking at, like, let's say you have 10 people in your team. The ability to grow all 10 people is what's critical, not just yourself. So I'll expand a little more, and if I still haven't answered anything or you have any more ideas, jump right in there, Charles, okay? All right. Okay. So we're going to make this shift of creating this potential. And what I want to talk about is some of the things you may hear today. You say, oh, yeah, I already know that. But be open to creating some shift. Eric Hoffer says it best when he says, in a time of drastic change, it is the learners who inherit the future. The learned usually find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. So I want to think about this hour we're going to spend together just to find something that will allow that 1 degree shift for you. And, one of the analogies that I've heard is that, if there was a ship on the east coast of Canada and it was heading towards a continent, let's say it was heading to Europe, and it took a 1 degree shift, it could end up on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean at a different continent. And so if we look at that here, if we take something from, these little gems you find in a session like this, and you apply it for a long period of time, there can be a significant shift that happens from that. So what we're talking about here is the shift from you to maximizing the potential of your people. And so one of the first things I want to do before I get any further, so it's going to be Charles helping me out here, I would like you to think about it this way. I want you to take a moment and I want you to step forward into a place where you are that empowering leader. And I would like you in the chat, put a couple words there of why this is important for you to be that person. There's always legs. We just have to wait for it to pop up. And so Charles says to impact knowledge on others and see them grow. Thank you. And if you're listening to this after, I want you to stop and take a moment as well to think about who you would be in the future and what those couple of words would be for you as well. So let's go into key number 1. And Charles, you led me right into it. So the question really is, how do successful, proven professionals with strong technical skills, financial acumen, industry knowledge, and raw cognitive ability shift from me to we? It's really tough, and it is the key issue for a sole contributor. So part of the solution to this is actually changing your mindset that you are not a lone wolf. Okay, and I described that earlier on about myself, right? But in essence, you have these people. So you need to make the shift to see yourself not standing apart, but as part of a team, your team. So key number 1 is actually letting go. I'm going to give you an example. When I was a CFO at C. Franklin, I promoted an excellent IT professional to lead the IT department. But he never survived the role because he couldn't let go of the work he did before. And so he could not make space to expand into his role of leading. So things that you want to think about as you make this shift, and as I mentioned to you before, Charles, so what is it that you bring to the team that is unique and what isn't? And remember, that can change over time as well. And now the other part that's so important is really starting to understand what are your team's skills, their desires for growth, and their need for support. And the other thing is, don't walk yourself down by the definition that has been written out in your job description. That was created in a moment of time. And teams and organizations are fluid. So let's think about this in terms of what leadership is. And one of my favorite authors is Brené Brown, and I like her definition of what a leader is. It's anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. Because let's be honest, it is much easier to do it ourselves because we don't have to engage. We don't have to bring anybody along. But that is not what a leader is about. So just to bust a few myths here, how do you do this? Key of it is to make the shift. You do not have to be all-knowing. I learned this when I was a teacher. It is much more rewarding to watch my students discover knowledge for themselves than to tell them. And what happens is we create more answers and more creativity. How do we start this process of hearing the voices if we don't allow the space for it? It actually becomes a disservice to others if we don't. And it's a game we can't win because there's access to so much knowledge out there today. We aren't the all-knowing. So the way to prevent yourself from doing this is to make the shift. Go from all-knowing to all-learning for both you and your team. And the hint on this one, if you create this shift, then if mistakes happen, they become part of this learning and not this way that it beats people down. So we need to make the shift from me to we start with respect. Your people are resourceful. They can make best choices. They have positive intention for what they're doing, and they are okay. So it starts with respect. So start connecting with your team as a team player and with respect for your people. Look at what could get in the way of you connecting with your team. And do you know? And do you know how to dig into this? So that was key number one. I'm going to move into key number two. So the problem we have is that we bring ourselves into every conversation, to every interaction. So what's critical here, and the solution is really starting to understand who we are in those conversations. What is blocking us? What are we triggering in others and ourselves? And do we have empathy in our conversation? So that's why key number two is increasing your self-awareness. Dr. Tasha Eurich, an organizational psychologist, researcher, and New York Times best-selling seller, sums it up. Leaders who cultivate self-awareness bust through the barriers to change, make smarter decisions, and lead more profitable companies. I'm going to jump in with a personal story. For me, which is tough. I grew up in a family where it wasn't okay to show emotion. It was a very logical engineering family and not big on communication skills. This worked well for me as a CFO because I would just go after the facts until it didn't. My head was engaged, but not my heart. And until I was a successful CFO, but empty and unfulfilled, I didn't get it. So you know that saying, you don't know what you don't know. Well, I was not aware that there was something missing. So before I go on this one, I just want to talk a little bit about the neuroscience here. We have three physical brain systems. At the stem is our reticular brain system, our oldest system, our physical kinesthetic system, and it sends us into fight or flight. And I'm sure everyone has felt that somewhere in this last year. Moving up into our limbic system, our emotional brain system, along with our reticular system, it links us into our physical and emotional awareness. It also drives our desire for groups, teams, others, and for survival. And it's where we create our patterns. Our top layer and most recent is our cerebral cortex system. It's flexible, it makes visual constructs, it integrates functions, self-organizes. So why am I sharing this? So once again, having stepped into leadership as that excelling sole contributor, you are a thinker, a planner, an integrator, a doer, etc. Your cerebral cortex system is firing on all systems. That's your task brain. But are you physically and emotionally aware? Do you know your patterns and their impact on you and others? And you're not quite sure what I'm talking about, I'm going to give you the definition on emotional intelligence. It is the competencies, it's a set of emotional and social skills which help determine the way people perceive and express themselves, how they develop and maintain social relationships, how they cope with changes and challenges, and how they use emotional input inside and outside of the workplace. So let's bust a few myths. You think maybe you can't change. Well, guess what? Patterns are not forever. They can be changed and shifted. And it's been proven we can create new pathways in our brains. And I know you're thinking, I hear you, it's not easy. I agree. But once you are aware of a pattern, you can learn to shift that pattern. And a hint on this one is especially effective if you use all three parts of your brain to do that. So, being self-aware is not just about being aware of your thoughts. It's also how our emotions impact our interactions and how our patterns, many of which we're unaware of, help or sabotage our interactions and relationships. So this is a key to allow you not to be a block as you help grow your team. And some ways that you can build this is to practice reading others, learn awareness of your own triggers and how to regulate them, and practice expressing feelings appropriately. And there are great online programs for this, or you might want to go after it one-on-one, or you might want to do it in group coaching to build those skills. So that's key number 2. And both of those are about you. Now we're going to move into the interaction part. So key number 3 has to do with how you listen. So the first thing I want to think about is how can you listen in a way that you want to be heard? Now, that's only the starting point, because actually you need to listen in the way someone else needs to be heard. We call this active deep listening. And it is one of the keys to effective communication and transformational conversations. And what's really key is that it leads to deep rapport, trust, and connection. And this has become even more important in this world of remote work, where everything is on a Zoom call or a Google Meet, and we're all like little small thumbprints, right? We need to really hear. So listening is the start point here. It's the key to effective communication and transformational conversations. As I said, yet most of us listen at a very surface level. Often we sort what we hear according to what it means to us and how we perceive the world. And we know how dangerous that is. Stephen Covey, a guru of leadership, he has a quote that really fits here. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. How often have you tried to get the answer in your head ready so that you could jump in? Okay, that's what we're talking about. So if you need a visual for this, use this metaphor of all ears. Nothing else, just the listening. So a couple ways to prevent yourself from making a mistake here is, as you listen, you are not creating the solution. And as you listen, you are not distracted with other stuff. Planning the next meeting. Where do I pick the kids up? Looking at your phone. So in a nutshell, active listening is listening without attachment, judgment, or the need for a goal. It is physically, emotionally, and mentally present for the other person. And of course, you're still listening for content, but you're also listening for values. Why is it important what the person is saying? It's the why that matters. Part of it is focusing warmly on the other person, showing that you're physically engaged, leaning in. And you need to notice more than the words. What is the tone? What is the mood? What is the pacing? What are the emotions? So the mission, if you decide to accept it, is try it. Shut off the inner voice and listen the way others want to be heard. That's key number 3. Now, key number 4 is the flip side of this. So now you're working with your people and your teams. And the question really is how do you get your team to provide the solutions that are needed? And part of it is you're a facilitator of this. So you need to engage with your people in a way that you are curious. Let me give you an example. One of my clients, who is a C-suite leader for a long time, is a senior executive at 2 hospitals. And this is her quote. She entered into a professional coaching program with myself with a goal of trying to sort some career challenges and determine the next steps in her professional path. By being curious, she was able to dig deep within her soul to gain the courage to articulate her goals to herself as well as her superiors. From this work, she was able to culminate strategies to improve her professional position within her organization and to gain personal fulfillment. So this is an example where somebody was curious on themselves, but it's the same impact when you're curious with somebody else. So it's allowing the space for questions. How do you think? What do you know? And if you sit in a space of curiosity, someone will open up for you. Now, some of the fears around asking questions is, as a leader, it's kind of these old paradigms, right? If I ask a question, I won't have what it takes to hear the answer. So remember, we do not have to have all the answers. Remember, that's not our role anymore. We are traveling down a path as a leader with our people. Another fear is, well, if I dig into this with somebody, it will take too long to go into their fears and their feelings. And actual fact, no. There's a much larger cost in productivity through unproductive behaviors, poor performance, and disengagement if we don't dig in. And number 3 is, if I get too close to my staff, I won't ask the tough questions. Well, actually, the opposite is true. So if you're starting to build an ongoing conversation together, tough conversations are much easier to happen in that context than if they happen by themselves. And number 4, what are those questions? How do I create these powerful questions that will get people opening up? Well, one of the things is do not ask a question that will have a yes, no answer, because it shuts it right down. And the one thing that you do want is you want to be able to start in a place where you're on equal footing. So to do that, you need to ask permission. Is this a good time? So, you're either doing it online, say, is this a good time for us to get together and chat? And they can have a chance to respond. Or if it's live, you're popping your head in, is this a good time? So it gives person not to feel like they are jumping in at a point where it's not an equal ground. And then some of these questions, they're very simple, but they're very powerful. One of them we use every single day, but we use it as a surface level. And that is, how are you? But if you really wanted to know somebody was, that's deeper. So how are you? How are we? So you want to listen deeply and connect. What is it that you want? What do we want? What do our customers want? What does the world want? And why is this important to you? Back to those values again. Needing to go deep. What is underneath what is being presented? And how will you know when you have it? And so on. So simple questions that allow space for curiosity. So the mission here is create a place and a way to have these ongoing, powerful, solution-focused, curious conversations with your people. And you could practice this in a safe place with a peer or a coach, and just to build those skills. Because I know, as I've worked with leaders, it takes some of that practice because it's a bit stilted to start with. but it starts to flow the more we do it. So key number 5 is, and I mentioned this one earlier before, where when I was a CFO, I would always think that I had to come in with the ideas on my own. And we know that there's so much more power in getting everybody involved. So the problem is, are you trying to come up with all the ideas on your own? Okay. And the solution here is by engaging our employees in creating these solutions. We reduce the overwhelmed feeling that you would feel as a leader. We increase buy-in of our people because they are part of the idea solution group. We grow our employees and we increase engagement. So that's why key number 5 is building innovative, creative teams. And I really challenge people here around, why do you meet? Start to look at that. What is the value? Is it just information sharing that could happen in a different way? Are you eating up all the time on this structured stuff that doesn't move anything forward? Or are your teams innovative and building? So a personal story I have for myself is, at the beginning of my career, I was working at General Electric, and I was in the automotive division. We were competing against the Japanese. This was the 80s. And we either had to find the way to be more efficient, reduce our pricing, or we were done. And so in that crisis mode, we created cross-functional teams that were innovative and looked at things very differently. And it became the imprint for me to always create thinking organizations and to look at change not just as a linear process. And I have to say, and make the pause here, life as we move forward needs this way of work, pulling people that are very diverse together. So let's look at what is needed to create a solution. Like, we're looking at solving problems, implementing a process, creating a new product line, taking on a competitor, or it could just be the expectations of leadership that we're going to do better. So how do you actually engage your people in this? Well, I want you to think about that exponential value of collaboration. There is just something that happens when you put people together and there's a spark and ideas bounce off of each other. So we end up with better results when we have diversity of thought. Not only that, because people have been engaged with that, we start to have a shared vision. And it is the fastest way to implementation. And it allows for alignment, allows for the power of many voices, and ultimately it allows for ownership of all employees. Ed Catmull, the president of Pixar Animation and Disney Animation, in his book, he talks about embracing candor. And to me, this really fits. A hallmark of a healthy creative culture is that its people feel free to share their ideas, opinions, and criticisms. Now, the reason that I led us through the 4 steps before I talked about this one is I really believe that the key to creating this environment is built on trust. So nobody's going to risk and throw ideas into a group unless they feel it's a safe space. So part of those pieces of building that is letting go as a leader, creating self-awareness, building active listening into the practice on a one-to-one basis and in your group, and being curious. And then both at a one-to-one level and a group level, you started to build trust. So one more thing around this is the exponential power of collaborative creative thinking teams. So just think of these different elements. We end up with multiple perspectives and diversity. And this is critical. We are, in many, many ways, people are saying we all want to be heard. Another piece that comes in is multiple intelligences. And people don't think about that as much, but this came from my education background. And if you really look at it, I think there's up to 8 different intelligences now. And people grow them at different paces. And so bringing that diversity into the group, where someone's got a passion around science, someone's got a passion around writing, it really will create that diversity as well. Every one of our experiences are also about diversity, and they will really add value. And different ways of thinking add value as well. I'll give you an example of the concept of time. Some people are really historical in the way they think about time, and they're always going back and using examples from the past. They're your historians. Some people are very much in the present, the day to day, and they live in the moment. And then some are the future planners and the dreamers. And at different times, we may be different parts of this. But we need all of these elements as we are growing ideas that are going to work. And people bring different value sets, which are critical as well. So, and like I said, the big one is idea generation comes from the spark of collaboration. Okay, so I just want to put on my other slide. I'll pop her up. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is a bit of a summary of the ones I've talked about before. And these are the elements of leadership. So it's about connecting, co-creating, and co-activating. And the connecting piece is connecting to ourselves and to others. The co-creating is where we build the ideas together, and then co-activate is we roll it out, we implement. And all of these skills we've talked about are key to building these elements here. Okay, that's a real quick little pop in, pop off. There we go. Okay. So far, I've shared the first 5 keys to going from overwhelmed to empowering leader. And I'd love to take a moment now to hear what you've received so far, your insights, your gems, your breakthroughs. So Charles, since you're my live person here, if you could think for a second, something that is sticking with you and pop it into the chat, that would be great. Okay, thank you, Charles. So Charles is talking about self-awareness and letting go as being his 2 big takeaways today. So thank you. And once again, if you're listening to this after, I want you to take a break here and really look back now, because part of grabbing something and making a 1-degree shift is actually taking a breath and seeing what it is that's had an impact on you. So thank you. And thank you for your share. So I'm going to move a little bit further, but first I'd like to share a story and an opportunity to continue to work with you before I go to our last key. And this story is about a client of mine, Stacy, who had felt overwhelmed. Now, her conditions may be different than what we're talking about here, but they also may be inspirational. When Stacy came to me, she was struggling with being stuck, overwhelmed, unmotivated, and lacking confidence to move forward in her career. In our work, she discovered why she kept stopping, quitting, stalling, and not reaching her goals. In 5 months of working together, we discovered some pretty incredible things. Stacy shared with me that she was not doing the work she dreamed of, and is amazed how quickly everything has changed after creating a clear vision for her future, completed with steps of how to get there. She says she is living proof that anything is possible. Just commit to getting clear, doing the work, and above all, showing up. So it is stories like that that make me very grateful for the work I get to do and keep doing. And I know you too can get amazing results with your team as an empowering leader through authentic connection and collaboration. So I have shared some powerful keys that can help you and your team exceed expectations. But I've shared earlier, in order to achieve the most with your team, it takes more than just the 60 minutes of thinking about that, right? We all know that there's many challenges to making this happen, and they don't dissipate on their own. That's right. As emerging and evolving leaders, we know we are empowered to do something about it. That's why I'm passionate about teaming up, because I want your work to be fun, connected, and above all, collaborative, with goals met and exceeded. And I am ready to work with you in that, because for the past 14 years, that's the journey that I've been on. Now, I'm just going to mention here my program, but it's one of many things that I do. My program builds skills for you to be an empowering leader through group and one-to-one coaching and training. And if you're not ready just to learn, but also to exceed, then putting actual commitment to elicit this significant change for you and your team would happen in this next 6 months. As a first step, though, I would like to offer you a one-to-one emerging and evolving leadership strategy session, which is complimentary. And why would I do that? Well, because any product or service worth investing in should be free to try before committing. So I use the analogy of a car, right? Could you imagine buying a car before test driving it? That doesn't make much sense to me. This way, it gives us both a chance to kick the tires. And so I'm offering a 60-minute emerging and evolving leader strategy session entirely free. And what you would get in that, here's a taste of it. We'll explore what your challenges are right now. We'll create a vision of where you want to be in 4 to 6 months and why it's important to you. And we will create the first action steps towards this vision. At the end of the session, we'll also explore if we see value in continuing to work together. And if you do, then I can offer you options of one-to-one coaching, or my 8-session leadership course, or my 4 to 6 month personalized high performance leadership program. So before we continue to the Q&A and look at key number 6, I would like to open up a form. I'm going to put this in here now. Okay. I'd like to open up this form and to reflect on today's ideas. And it's also where you can communicate how you'd like to move forward, including booking your private strategy session. So I'd like to take a minute. And Charles, since you're my only live person right now, if you could click into that. And I will also put this on my website so others can click in as they engage to the recording. So I'll wait a couple of minutes while it gets filled in. And Charles, if you just let me know when you're finished, and then I'll move on. Give it one more minute, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
I'm done.
Thank you. So I'd love to take a few questions about any of the content I've shared or about the private coaching session I've just gifted you. It's all welcome. And so I don't know if you have any questions you're thinking about right now, Charles?
I have a question.
Yes.
Like you said, as a sole contributor, right? You're wired to you're task oriented, and you you want to deliver.
Yes.
Now, being a leader, one has to let go. Tell me, what are the skills you require to let go? Because it happened to me, right? I moved from individual contributor to a leadership position, and nobody told me this then.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my downfall was I couldn't let go of task-oriented stuff, right? So after about a year, one of my bosses gave me feedback that, hey, when I ask you to do something, I don't mean do yourself, use your team, And I said, okay, but it's hard when you know something, you can do it.
I do know, Charles.
Yeah. So it how does one make this transition, hey, from hey, let go, even if you know it, have someone else in your team do it. What what skills do you need to do that?
And I think it comes down to, it becomes less about a skill and more about taking the risk,
Okay.
right? Because we've talked about the skills here, right? We've talked about what it looks like. And we can go deeper into those skills, right? Of listening and asking questions and but what it really takes is saying that this is the priority. This is the job. And I know that's hard because and that's why I really focus on people who have got a lot of technical background, because it is the most challenging for our engineers and our accountants and our project managers and our doctors and our to say what. I've spent 20 to 30 years delivering in everything I've ever done, and it's been about me, right? And now you're saying, because I did really well as that, I'm now going to do it for other people. So the skills really are, it's not about you. It can't be about you. And if it is about you, then you need to go find a job that's about being a sole contributor at a high-end technical level. That's where your growth will be. Because to step into leadership and to do it well and to actually have, I use the number 10, but that's probably a high team for a number of people. So let's say there's 5 people in your team. The exponential power of working with those 5 people is much bigger than 5 sole contributors. It's how do you get each of those individuals to grow, but then also grow as a team. And where you contribute is you're part of that team too, right? And so there's a piece that you do. And so the other skill that I would say is, first of all, you have to step into it. And the other one is you actually have to schedule it. Okay. So it's like, it's opening the calendar up and saying, this is how much time I'm going to be a sole contributor, and this is how much time I'm going to be a leader. And so then you start to do things like schedule one-to-ones with your team people every couple of weeks. You start to schedule a creative thinking meeting that happens, and you start to build the vision of what it takes for that work to happen. Because you know how to do the tasks, right? So if somebody had a technical question for you, that's easy for you. That's easy. That's not what we're talking about. And so one of the other things that I would throw to you, and Charles, we can do a one-to-one session, and we can talk deeper about this. And then if you want more practice in it, my 8-session leadership course is really good for this, because I'm really working these skills, and you do takeaways. So it's not long or intense, but it gets you to practice. And I just closed down my little thing here. I got to get it back. So part of it is you saying to yourself that this is important. And, and it's really like stepping over the chasm. And that's what I mean by letting go. You can't do it until you see that it is the priority. And then, of course, I can help work with the skills with you if that's something you want to do. We can make that happen too. Does that help a little bit?
That helps a lot, yeah.
Okay. I'm excited for you, Charles. It's the great stuff. It really is. Okay. So I'm just going to step into this now and talk a little bit about commitment. So most people do not fully commit themselves to getting the results they need from their team. So this, you walked right into this, Charles, because that's what happens, right? And that's why teams have so much more potential than is being used. Because leaders are half in, half out, lukewarm, maybe someday I'll do it. The team will soar maybe someday, but not right now. They flounder. So there's not something wrong with yourself or the team. It's this maybe energy that has caused people to fall short. So key number 6 is bold commitment. Every person who exceeds their expectations are very committed. It doesn't happen by accident. It isn't luck. It is bold, unwavering, unstoppable commitment that this is the most important thing. But just so you know, we're all human, and we do fall back to the things we're most comfortable with. So we will struggle. That's what happens. So I'm going to share with you a time in my life that I was scared to commit to getting what was right for me. I was working in the automotive industry in Ontario as a CFO with GE and affiliates, but my family was out west. I was alone. So I debated, should I move to have balance with family, with work? But I was concerned. I had no contacts, no oil and gas exposure. Would my manufacturing background fit in? Would I like it out west? I even put out feelers for jobs. And I was so insulted. I got back a job because I was a CFO. Oh, you could be a secretary. I go, what? Who are these people? But I committed. I went. I sold my house. I packed up. And I got the support that I needed when I got here. And it took time, and it wasn't cheap. It took me 2 years of hard work in small companies. And I had to believe in myself that this was right. I put myself first to get this balance of work and family, and it was so worth it. Because I would not be where I am today if I didn't, right? So I have journeyed through being a leader in the oil patch. I'm an educator. I adopted a child from China. And now I'm an executive and leadership coach and facilitator. None of those things would have happened if I hadn't made the first step. So that's why I have a question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to stop from being overwhelmed and to start empowering your people? So think about it. Scale of 1 to 10. Give yourself a number. If you're truly not committed at a level 8, 9, or 10, then I want to thank you for your honesty. If you are at an 8, 9, or 10, take a deep breath, because the most important thing, it's time to take action. If you connected to what I shared today and are committed to an 8, 9, or 10, then I would love to support you in your transformation from being overwhelmed to empowering leader. So as I wrap up this message, I want to leave this with you. And I'm talking to you, Charles, because you're my lone soul here. You are extraordinary, and you are worth it. You are capable of navigating this, as you've navigated many challenges to get here, right? So don't forget that. So I want to thank you so much. And it's been an honor to have this conversation. And I am available for any questions. And I've got Charles's phone, and anybody else who listens to this after, please reach out. And maybe what I'll do as well is just put my email in here. .coach at gmail.com as well. Thank you. And, I want to say to you, Charles, is that, I'm doing this because of where I come from and the gap that I see in leaders. And so for you to say what you have said, you are the norm, not the exception. Okay. And great leaders grow from this moment of knowing there's this difference from being a sole contributor to being a leader. And they're two different things. So I really appreciate you coming on here and continuing to inspire me that this is where we need to go. And so do you have any last questions for me before I
Yeah, I want to thank you very much. And this exceeded my expectations, right? When I got the invite for this course, I kind of knew what I was going to get into, but you exceeded my expectations, right? I'm very glad that we had this session together. You are good at what you do, and I've learned a lot for the past 54 minutes, okay? I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you,
I
Charles.
learned a lot, yeah.
Good. Well, have a great day. And to everybody else out there, take care. And I'm going to end the call now. So,
All right, thank you.
all right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.